Hey, Composing Gloves here, and today we're going to be going over the sample playback controls in Iris 2 to get your samples to behave the way you want. There are some buggy features in here that I'll show you, but let's just go ahead and make this as straightforward as possible. So I'm going to load up a sound. It's in voice, consonants, the coop sound. If you want to use the same sample, it's included in the download content that comes with Iris 2. So we're going to be looking at this bottom controls here and these controls over here. Right off the bat, we can see that we have our sample tab, which is right here. We're able to collapse it if we desire by clicking on this triangle. And we're able to do this, load up a new one for each 4 sample slots. For here, we can solo and mute, which is the same thing as pushing these buttons up here. They're included here for convenience. And we're able to change our sample if you want. It's the same browser, just in a different location. You can preview samples and click through and find stuff you want. Or you can just drag a sample onto here, provided it's in the correct format. So we have playback controls. Playback controls, so we have forwards. It'll play it from the forwards. It will play it forwards, and that's just it. It'll start at the beginning, as you can see. Right now, loop is on. If we turn loop off, it's a one shot. I'm going to take this opportunity to turn up my output just so we can hear it easy. So we have our loop. That was our loop off. We turn it on. Whoops, I have it on backwards. Wow, what a great tutorial so far, right? So anyways, that's forwards. Backwards is pretty obvious. It started at the end of the sample and played it backwards. And then we have forwards backwards. Forwards backwards is going to start at the beginning and play it backwards. Now these can be manipulated though through the use of loops. We're going to get into that in just a sec. So we'll play forwards and then it will play backwards. And if we have our loop off, it does it once. But check this out. If we go to backwards, forwards, sometimes these are different. Okay, so you see right now, pretty straightforward, nothing crazy. As we get into loops, by the way, if you're clipping like I am right now, you can simply click to get rid of it. I'm just not going to worry about clipping right now. So cool. And so that's it. Forwards, play it backwards. Backwards will go start at the end, play it, and then play it forwards, which is backwards. It's confusing. It's playing it backwards and then forwards. Whatever. Okay, cool. And if we turn on loop, it will loop through those functions. So let's talk more about this loop functionality. Let's go to forwards first. So we're playing it at the beginning, but we can change that by moving the offset. So it's actually playing from this offset. So if I hit a note, it starts at wherever this offset value is. You can hold down control and drag to get fine values. And maybe that's something that you really want. Maybe that's like your dream sound right there. So cool. So that is how offset works. And so we can hold down control. You could also double click and type in a value, which can be useful if you're trying to line up your offset with your loop start or end. And okay, cool. Let's toss loop into this. So we turn on our loop. Our loop's not displayed. If we move a control, our loop shows up. And if we move our loop, boom, we can control it with these triangles up here. We notice our loop has fades on it. We have a fade right here and a fade right here. This is our crossfade. We are going to get into that in just a sec. So that's why our loop has been looping in the fashion that it has, is because these points have been here, but they aren't displayed. This is a feature that I think is a bug. I think as soon as you turn that on, it should appear, you know? And there are other times where it disappears, but you can see it affects playback pretty clearly. So we'll look at those in just a sec too. So loop start is where our loop begins. If our offset, let's move our loop endpoint up. I'm just going to click and drag it and move our loop start point up. So with our offset back here, it's going to start, we're in forwards mode, so it's going to start at our offset and then play into our loop. Once it reaches the loop end, it will go back to the loop start and loop for us. Very cool. Now, that is like super straightforward. Let's move our offset into the middle. Well, now what's going to happen? Well, it's going to start at our offset. It's going to play to the end and then loop back. So it still goes through our loop. It just happens to start there now. Now, if we move it back to the back, this is where things get interesting. Would you expect it to start at our offset and then play to the end? But it's got loop on. So it's got to make a decision. In this case, it decides to start at the loop start point in the forwards mode and just play through the loop. It completely ignores your offset. So you see, that's what goes on. So pretty cool. Now, so you want to be wary of where your offset position is if you count on using that. And well, And if it's affecting your playback, then just go and move it. So cool. Now we see that we have these fades. This is the crossfade control. This is another one that I recommend holding down control to manipulate or typing in a value. And if we have it off, there'll be no crossfade. So it's not going to fade out and fade in. And so there will be probably a click. So you see right now, it actually works into the sound, but some sounds it's very undesirable. So you would simply move your crossfade up and it will smooth that out for you. And it's worth experimenting with values to get the particular behavior you want. Sometimes it's a big deal. Sometimes it's not a big deal. Like for example, in this one, not a super big deal. So okay, so that's our loop start and crossfade, our offset, and then again our delay. Just you hit a note, I mean, just to show you one more time, hit a note and it's going to delay it by this amount of samples, I believe, and then it will play the note. So you see, that was quite a long delay. Okay, cool. Now let's move into forwards, backwards. So I'm going to show you with loop on first because it's more intuitive, because it gets a little complicated after that. I get various behaviors. Sometimes it does it the way I expect it to. Sometimes it doesn't, but it's weird. And the loop will disappear. Just weird stuff goes on. So what we're going to do is right now, it's going to behave exactly what you think. It's going to play it forwards from my offset, go into the loop, reach the loop end, and instead of jumping or crossfading to our loop start, it's going to reverse it. It's going to play it backwards to our loop start, and then it's going to play it forwards, and it will go through our loop. So that's a pretty cool effect, pretty handy. If we move it to the middle, our offset, it will again, you see our crossfade just moved. See, just weird stuff happens. And so it's going to now do exactly what you think it would. It'll start here and go through the same motion. So to reach our loop end, then play backwards to our loop start, then play forwards, backwards, forwards, on and on and on. So that'd be like maybe you want a particular articulation at the very beginning of the note or whatever. And if you have these really close together, maybe you're trying to make a tone of some kind, right? So if you move your loop start really close, maybe you're going for one of those effects. You can record that into your track. Really cool, handy dandy. Now, let's say that our offset, this is where it can get a little weird, but in this case, our loop is on, so it's not too crazy. Our offset is now behind our loop. So what's it going to do? Is it going to play it to the end and then go backwards or what? So let's just go ahead and hit a note. And you see that it decides to just start. I believe it starts at your loop start. Let's move it farther away so it's easier to tell. And I check this most times now because sometimes it just, for whatever reason, decides to do something different. It looks like it's starting in the middle. So, or it looks like it's starting at the loop end. Anyways, it's picking up, I think it starts at the loop end and it just plays forwards, backwards. You get the idea, but it ignores your offset. So it's a little uncertain. So just move your offset in there. And now there's no question about it. And that's why I recommend you lining up your offset with where your loops are, just so that you have that consistency so you can rely on like an actual behavior. Now let's go ahead and turn loop off. Now in forwards backwards mode, it still wants to play forwards backwards, right? You've told it that's what you want. So this is where bugs and weird things ensue. So if I play it right now, our offset's at the beginning, so it's going to play it forwards, but at what point will it decide to play it backwards? Will it pay attention to our loop endpoint, or will it play it all the way into the sample and then go back? These are things that aren't very clear. Check it out. It's still going through our loop. Like, what the heck, man? Our loop's not on. But that's just the way it behaves under this particular circumstance. If I move it into the loop, you see our loop now disappears. But check this out. You would expect it to go, right? Well, let's play no. It still plays the loop. So that's weird. And now let's go to the end. This is well after our loop, right? Well, let's play no. And look, there. Now I'm definitely sure it starts at the end point. But you see, it started there, and it's like, what the heck, man? Like, what's the deal here? So even with loop on and off. Now, if you toggle it, so I've had occasions where I get like varied behavior. So just weird stuff that you should be aware of. I don't know what's going on under the hood, but it's funky, that's for sure. Now in backwards mode, whoops, I hit the browser icon. In backwards mode, I'm going to turn loop on. And you see that when we turn our loop on, the loop still doesn't show up. If I play no, it's very clear that it's still acting on our stuff though. So it's like, wow, that's not convenient at all. So what we're going to do is we're just going to move it and bam, it shows back up. So with backwards, it's going to start at our offset, play backwards, and then it do as you would expect. Now, I made a misstatement. It's not going to start at our offset in backwards mode. It's going to start at the loop endpoint. Our offset is like basically worthless unless it's past the loop endpoint. So when it's past the loop endpoint, it will start at our offset. So you see it can do its job. Before the loop, it'll start at the loop end and then we'll go through. So this is stuff that as you just mess with it, you get the behaviors that you want. But in the middle, it starts at your offset. And at the end, it will ignore your offset again. So it's got to be in your loop to affect it. And so that's just something you need to know. Now, if we have it off, as you saw, now with it off, it's actually going to start at your offset. And since it's at the beginning and there's nothing at the beginning, it's going to not do anything. But if we move it, move our offset, and our offset suddenly is not visible. Oh, there we go. I had to go down. Oh, there you go. Behaves the way we want. Okay, cool. It must be the backwards forwards is the one I'm thinking of. So with backwards forwards, no loop on. And this one doesn't loop. The other one was looping. This one doesn't loop. At least I believe it was looping. Let's go to forwards, backwards. See, that one loops. That one doesn't want to loop. So it's just weird. Just letting you know. So as we move it, if we turn our loop on, our loop doesn't appear, but if we move it, then it will appear. And it behaves in very much the same way as the forwards backwards does, only now with the same conditions as backwards and backwards forwards implies on where the offset is. So it's just weird explaining all this stuff when I'm messing with it and just using it as a synth. It's very intuitive to me because I'm like, oh yeah, except for the bugs, those weird things are just weird. So let's go ahead and now talk about the pitch mode. So you saw that as I hit a lower note, that's so cool. As I hit a lower note, it plays very slow. If I hit a high note, it plays very, very quickly. And that might be an undesirable thing. We'll also notice that if I hit a note, let go of it and hit a note, it will re-trigger, meaning it will start at my offset. Let's go to an easy playback mode just so this is super clear. So we're going to go to forwards and turn our loop off. And you see our loop's still there, but it's not really there. And you see I have to move something to make it go away. So if I hit a low note, it starts and plays through just like you would expect. If I hit again, it would start there. Like it just keeps re-triggering, right? If I hit a note and then hit another note while that note is down, it is going to re-trigger the envelope, meaning it's going to start at the beginning. So you see all my new notes are starting here, even though I'm holding down that note. So, okay, pretty cool. But what if we have re-trigger off? Well, what would happen is as I hold down that note, the new note would pick up playback where the current note is at. And it's very easy to see on low notes. So you could see it picking up playback from where that note was. So it doesn't start back here at the beginning. It starts wherever the current note is. And that's because I'm holding down that note and then hitting the other notes. So pretty cool. So that's the pitch mode on resample. And that's what retrigger does, by the way. So that's resample. Let's go ahead and move over to radius RT. This mode is used, and you probably just got a pop-up if you turned it on. But this mode is used to keep time consistent as you pitch up and down. So you see that it is the same amount of time as a higher note. And it also sounds quite different because of the way they are pitching things up and down. So if you need it to sound consistent, that's really great. Something you should keep a note is the farther away you move from the root note, the more processing power it takes to get to play that. So if I play a note that's like on the other end of the keyboard from where the note is placed on the keyboard, it's going to be like much more processing intensive versus if I play a C4 and then play a note up, not that much processing involved, easy peasy to do. So, okay, cool. That's what's going on there. Radius RT, if you want to configure its settings, because it is quite intensive and it actually has a whole bunch of problems with voicing. So if you want to play something with a lot of voices, probably not a great idea. What I use it for is like drum loops, things that I'm going to be focusing on that thing. And I just want to use the crazy cool filtering that comes with Iris 2. So I was mentioning earlier about the root note or the pitching of the note. So when you put a note down, it picks a place to put the notes. Right now it's put on C4. We can change this by moving it up or down. You want this to be the note that it actually is. So if it's like an A3, you should have it be an A3 on your keyboard, because it's going to think that, oh, this note is an A3. Otherwise, if it's not an A3, let's say that it's just, let's say it is an A3 and you put it as a C4, now it's going to be off by a minor third on every note that you play. Let's see if I have some, actually they have notes in their sample. So let's load up, we'll go to instruments, bells perhaps. And then see this one, desk bell ring at C sharp. And so let's load that one up. And you see it's moved it to G sharp. Well, if I were to, let's move it to C sharp. So when I hit a C, it should actually be a C. And we can actually test this. We can get out just anything, any sort of a sine wave generator, and go, that's a C. And wait for it to pop up. It takes a while. Okay, there we go. And you see, that sounds like the same note. But if we were to move our root note, let's say move it to a G sharp 3, like where it was, well, let's hit that C. And you see, that's like not even close to what it was. We'll move it down so it pitches up instead. So we have this. That should be a C, but a C, clearly not correct. So if we move it to the C sharp that it's supposed to be, and we're like, hey, okay, so you see, even on samples that it says the thing, it still pitches them wrong. It tries to detect the pitch and place it intelligently on the keyboard. So this could be just a battle. Just make sure you fought the battle out beforehand. Another thing you should notice when you're filtering sounds, so if you were to go to spectrogram, if you filter sounds and say take the harmonic up here, well, this harmonic could be a completely different note than that. Like you could be changing the note of the instrument so that it's no longer C sharp 3, because let's say that you treat this as your fundamental. Now this actually does kind of sound like your fundamental. So that's something that you just need to be aware of, is that if you change the fundamental of your note, you may consider moving your root note around. So yeah, that could be a big hassle with tonal notes and other such things. But in percussive loops, probably not that big of a deal. You're also able to change the root note here as opposed to just clicking and dragging down here. But I think that this is a really awesome way of doing it. And you're able to clear your sample by simply clicking clear sample, and you're back to where you started. You can pick another sound and away you go. So that is general sample behavior. If you have any questions, let me know, subscribe, and have a blessed day.